is going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 3 of Grow the Buck Up. This episode is called Wherever You Go, There You Are. It originally was going to go under the Love Yourself series. Like I said, there are going to be many series throughout this podcast, but I felt like it was a great one to add to the introduction series as it just helps kick things off. I wanted to kind of get a broad range of topics to kind of start with that very much started your motivation and gave you some of the basic steps towards building yourself to a happier life. So one of the sayings, or wherever you go, there you are, is one of my favorite quotes that I heard from my mother. She got it from my uncle, and he got it from somewhere else, and I'm sure it goes way back, and I'm sure millions of people have said this, so quote it from where you would like. But it's one of those things that carries so much power in so few words, and it's continued to inspire me to search for meaning in my life. It's one of the quotes, the few quotes that I've written down on the front page. I have, I believe, 4 or 5 quotes written down on the front page of my notebook, and this is one of them. So this takes me back a little bit, right, to initially, and if we go back through the story, right, if you listen to podcast 1 and podcast 2, you kind of know the story there. This is a little bit before the build your life you want, then save for it. So we're jumping a little out of order, but that's okay. So I was unhappy with who I was at that time, right? I had just gotten out of this relationship, and I started reflecting on my life and the things that I was doing, and I was unhappy with it. I didn't like the habits that I had. I wasn't optimistic about my projected future. My relationships, not just romantic relationships, but all relationships, how I was handling myself in those, all the way from big things like that to even just little things. Maybe people I was telling lies to, right? Maybe sometimes I wasn't being 100% honest all the time, or I was being shady in certain situations, whatever it was. Any of those instances just furthered this unhappiness with who I was, because I always saw that, and that always really brought me down. And so what I did was I started traveling, right? I started exploring, and I started doing things in hopes of finding joy. And this is before I went on all the, a lot of the other things, but I went out to Harper's Ferry with my brother and some of his friends. I went to Germany to stream games at Gamescom for Blizzard, which was super cool as an experience. I went on a few dates. I connected with some old friends. But no matter what I did, no matter where I went, there was always a one constant factor: me. I was always there. And this unhappy version of myself that I wasn't proud of existed. And as long as this person existed, and they were there wherever I was, it was impossible for me to truly enjoy these experiences. Because while you're alive, you simply cannot escape yourself. You spend more time with yourself than anyone you will ever meet. Ever. That is a fact for every single person that exists forever. And so think of yourself as another person for a second. Let's pretend like maybe it's a weird thing to say, but let's pretend that you are also someone else, or this yourself that you have to be around is someone else. Now think that you're spending 24/7 with that person. You better like that person. You better love hanging out with that person. They're going to see every embarrassing moment, every joy of yours, every fall of yours, every lie of yours, every single thing that you consciously do or whatever. They will see it. Now think about your mood when you're around someone you really like. It's great, right? Great relationships bring you up. They inspire you. They motivate you. They make you feel just, there's some people, when they walk into a room, they light up the room, right? And you just go, wow, I love spending time with this person. This is fantastic. Now think about your mood when you're around someone you don't like. They're kind of toxic. They lie. Their faults, they stand out to you more. Everything about them annoys you more. It brings you down. You just want to leave. You just want them to leave. You want to get away, right? It's just a stressor. Well, now guess what? That's you, and you can't get away from yourself. So now you have a choice. Do you continue to have this terrible relationship with yourself? Or are you going to grow the buck up and fix it? Be the bigger person. Admit to yourself that you messed up. You made mistakes. Forgive yourself. Everyone makes mistakes. And then you come up with a plan so you and your friend self can move forward. Right? This is where the journey to build life begins. It's not just about the experiences that you're having. It's not just about who you're surrounding yourself with and all of this. I mean, there's a lot of important pieces here. But the first thing is it all starts with you. It all starts with who you are as a person. And not who you were. I think it's very important to state that. I've done things in the past that are not in character with who I am today. 100%. It happens. One, I was a different person back then. I've grown from that person. Two, I made mistakes. I let moods and things and my state of mind and whatever it was get the better of me. And I have learned from it and pushed forward. Now, will I make mistakes in the future? Sure. Are there sometimes going to be things I do that I don't like? Yeah. And when those come, I will sit down with myself and I'll have another talk. And I'll say, hey, I didn't really like how you handled that situation. Maybe let's change that. So once you start there, once you begin and simply admitting some things that you see about yourself and forgiving some things that you've done and anything along that path, once you accept it and want to move forward, that is truly, I believe, the first step here. So going back to my story, this is where that build the life you want, then save for it began. Because it wasn't just about these experiences and these trips and these things to do. It was about changing myself, using actions to do things that would push me to become the person that I wanted to be. Remember that person I talked about who walks through the door and the room lights up? I wanted to be that person. I wanted to light the room up. I don't just magically one day say, hey, I'm going to walk into a room and people are going to go, wow, he looks like he lights the room up. It takes time and effort, and you have to build yourself to become that person. Because when you talk to that person and you hear all the things they're doing, a lot of times at first you feel bad about yourself. You go, man, this guy, I mean, he does all of these things that are so beautiful in life, right? I'm nothing like that. I couldn't be that beautiful. And that's ridiculous. That is you just being either A, excusing yourself and doing it so you don't have to work that hard to get there, or B, having that negative mindset and putting yourself down simply because you've always done that before, right? You've always just said, that's not who I am because I'm worse than that. I'm just a worse person. I just don't have that skill, whatever it is. I don't think happiness is a skill. Maybe it is. I'd say it's not a talent that you're just born with. I think it's something that you work towards and you gain. So maybe it is a skill, but you have to work and learn it. And that's why you're here, right? To learn to be happy. To learn how to build yourself towards that happiness. So I wanted to do things that I could be proud of. I wanted to build skills like self-motivation, like work ethic, flexibility, determination. I wanted these skills because I knew that they would make me, they were skills that I saw in people that I wanted to be like. And it's okay to use other people as great examples, right? Find role models and you can talk to them. You can ask them questions. You can simply just stand afar and look in and see what are the things that I notice that they have in their life that I don't. What are the skills that they have that I don't? And how am I going to get this? And what I found is crazy is how much better your life becomes once you start to improve yourself as a person. Because like I said before, you're now not spending time with that toxic person, with that person who's lying and who's always doing all these things to undermine you. You're now spending time with that person that lights the room up. That is this awesome person that you love. And that just makes it so much better. And it's just like exercising or eating healthier. I think you can use this example. I'll probably use this example every single podcast because it's so great. When you are able to motivate yourself to work on a hobby, to push yourself, to try something new, it's extremely rewarding. It's sometimes hard to do first, but once you get in the habit of it, it becomes this just constantly rewarding thing that I think truly starts to bring happiness. One of my favorite experiences during my Build the Life You Want, my year of trips and trying stuff, was scuba diving. And I talked a little bit about this before, but I'll go a little more in depth here. And it wasn't because it was scuba diving. Overall, scuba diving as an activity was okay for me. I thought, yeah, it's all right. But it pushed me forward. My biggest fears in life were sharks, water, and drowning. I'd turned down free international trips before because I was scared of flying over the water. I never wanted to go to Disney World as a child because I thought you had to take the big red boat to go there, and I didn't want to go on the water. Anything and everything relating to water, or the ocean, I might say, was scary to me. And more so because of the sharks and the other large creatures in the ocean. So when I went scuba diving, it was facing those fears. And for those with this fear, they get it. For others, maybe you go, scuba diving's great. I don't know what you could be. Think about your biggest fear. Don't think about scuba diving if that's not a giant fear of yours. But think about your biggest fear and how scary facing that might be. If you're scared of heights, maybe it's skydiving. If you're scared of spiders, maybe it's sitting in a tank full of, spiders as they crawl all over you. Whatever it is, think of your biggest fear and facing it. And that's what I did. And there was something super surreal about the experience of facing all of my biggest fears, right, kind of wrapped up in one at once. And it was in that moment that I found one of my other favorite quotes. And this is actually a quote that I heard later on, but totally applied right there. And it was this: "I would rather be ashes than dust," by Jack London. I would rather have had something go wrong down there than lived a life fearing it. And my biggest fear was no longer sharks or the ocean or drowning. My biggest fear suddenly became living in fear. Now, this gave me the motivation I needed to develop the skills to be happy in life. And after that trip, I found myself enjoying the journey so much more. I had a renewed excitement for life and for financial independence, because I suddenly thought, you know what? Now that I've got all of this more excitement for life and for things to do, I want to go make sure I have the time to do them. Before, I just wanted to retire early to not work. Now I want to retire early so I can retire to something, which is to life. And so this opened the door for anything. And any time that I think something is too scary, I think back to that scuba trip. And this right here is my motivation. And yours might be entirely different. And that's entirely fine. Some people never need to swim with sharks to find out who they are or what they want in life. But whatever you need to find that happiness in your life, go find it now. You can always say that you'll do it later. And when you do, continue to live your first life. You continue to live your first life, and not your second life. Which, if you remember from last week, the quote, we have 2 lives until we realize we have one, right? The second begins when we realize we only have one. Once you start living that second life, things like this you will no longer want to do later. It's time to quit procrastinating and quit procrastinating on learning the skills to stop procrastinating. For some of you out there who go, well, I don't have the skills for that, right? At some point, you have to start putting yourself on the clock a little bit. You have to say, right now is the time to change. Right now is the time for me to stand up and go do whatever one thing it is that I'm supposed to do. And once again, you don't have to change the world in one step. You can't change the world in one step. And you can't think of it as one step. You have to think of it as the one tiny action over and over, just small actions, just adding up. And as you go, you'll slowly start to get there. And you'll find motivation and you'll find everything there. Once you start to see things, once you start to do things, that is when you start to grow and you start to gain these skills. Actions gain these skills, right? If I want to become a better swimmer, I need to swim more. If I want to become, any of these skills, you can only study so much. I want to get better at hockey. I can't tell you the number of times. I used to play hockey about 3 to 4 years ago before I got injured. And I played hockey, and I wanted to get better at shooting. And I wanted to get better at breakaways specifically, because I found myself in situations where I was having breakaways and missing them. And so one day, I went to the rink, and I got a puck. And for an entire 2.5 hour session, all I did was breakaways at the goal. And I practiced just nonstop breakaways at the goal. And by the end of that practice session, I had gained so much more skill than I could have imagined. And now I want to get better at them. And I've been studying, and I've watched so many videos, because that was years ago, and I came back into hockey and I realized my breakaway skills weren't as great. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go online and watch videos and read about it and study and all of this stuff. And my skills have not improved nearly as much this season on breakaways, because I haven't taken the actions. I haven't simply gotten up, looked at the schedule for the hockey rink, or one of the many around, and said, that's the session I'm going to go to. And then just written it in, booked it in, and gone and practiced. And when I do that, or when I'm going to do that, because I will go do that. I'm deciding right now I'm going to go do that. And when I go do that, I'm going to treat that like work. Where if my friend calls me up and goes, hey, you want to, go grab food, or do you want to, let's go out and go bowling or whatever, I'll say, hey man, sorry, I got to work from 5 to 7. Schedule the things in to build the skills. Whenever you take time for yourself, make sure that you're building that time. You're scheduling that time for yourself, and that it's not easily interrupted, that it's not easy to just push away, forget about. Take it seriously. And when you start taking it seriously, that's when you can start growing. So let's take a few minutes here. Put down the distractions for a second. If you're reading something else, quit reading it. If you're, watching a TV show, watching Netflix, pause it, turn it off, whatever it is. Let's just take a couple minutes and think, because it is so difficult in today's world, in today's society, to really spend a lot of time thinking and a lot of time with yourself. Even though you're always with yourself, I think it's very easy to distract yourself so you don't have to think about these things. You can always find some sort of noise, something going on that will just block out having to really have these thoughts. But I think sitting down and actually spending time with yourself and talking to yourself is a very important thing to do. So let's do that now. Let's ask some questions. Are you excited about your future? When you look at 5 years down the line, 10 years, 20 years, are you happy with that? Are you excited about that? Do you have goals that you want to accomplish? Or do you not have goals right now? Is it just kind of going through the motions? Just get to the next day sort of stuff? Or do you have short-term, medium, long-term goals? Are you trying your best? How about, are you proud of yourself? When you look at that person in the mirror, when you sit down and think about who you are, what you've done, people you've helped, hurt, all of that stuff, in the end, are you proud of who you've become? And lastly, are you happy? Because if you're not, change it. And now you might say, how? How do I change it? I'm hearing what you're saying and taking action. I'm starting to get this, but I feel like I can't. I feel out of control. I've got all these things. And so what I want you to do is I want you to simply think of things in your control right now that you can change to make yourself a better person. Right? Like I said before in that, I think it was the first podcast. Maybe it's simply throwing away a piece of trash. That could go on your list. And if it helps, if you like writing lists like I do, start writing a list. Write down all of these things. This is why I have this notebook. I put these questions in my notebook, and then I would go in there and I would keep trying to answer them. And I would try and expand on it and just word dump everything out of my mind onto the paper, and then I could read it back. And I could look at little things, and I could check things off. And I could come back in a week, a month, and I could write it again, and I could say, what about now? How have things changed now? But start to just think about those little things. And one of my favorite thoughts that I have is this. This is what I always come back to. And this is actually our next podcast title. Or the next podcast subject, I should say. I am 100% in control of my life. I cannot control others. I can't make any decisions for you. I could try and force some maybe, but I can't make the decisions. You're in 100% control of your life. Even if you don't feel like you are. And I think we give away power way too quickly. Way too easily. I 100% think that is the truth. Now, think about the control that you have. And let's just do a simple exercise. This is something that I do. It's very simple. It's maybe a little silly. But it's always something I do whenever I need to remind myself that I'm the only person in the whole world who in this exact moment can make this decision for myself. And what I do is I simply bend my finger. And then I can half bend it. I can wiggle it, bend it, whatever it is. But I take all of my focus and I bring it right there and I just bend my finger right when I choose to bend my finger. And nobody else has that power over me. And that's as small and as simple as you can make it. So whatever you can do, if it's dart your eyes, if it's, say something, whatever you want, do something that is in your control. And once you find that control, the whole world of change begins to open up to you. Right now, you're beginning your journey to change into the best person you can be, into becoming your own best friend. Find your motivation so you can enjoy that journey. Because I can almost guarantee that your future self would wish you were happy right now. Because guess what? They have to live with you too someday. Throughout life, you're only going to find more time with yourself. And if the person that you're with is unhappy, well, wherever you go, there you are. So my challenge for you this week is to write down skills you want to learn. I want you to find someone that you look up to. And this is the weekly challenge at the end. I want you to find someone that you look up to and write down the skills that they have that you want to change, that you want to gain to start becoming that better person. So that's my challenge to you. And I'd love if you'd, comment below with what they are. Tune in next week for our episode, You Control Your Life. As always, you can find these podcasts live on Twitch, on my YouTube at youtube.com/growthebuckup, on any of the popular podcast feeds, or on my own site, www.growthebuckup.com. That's all I have for now. Thanks for listening. Now it's time to grow the buck up.